But it raises the question, well, what about the people who have never heard of Jesus? I mean, what happens to somebody who didn't have access to the knowledge so they couldn't make a decision for themselves? And I know for some of you, this is an academic question, a question you kind of want to know the answer to, or maybe you want to be ready for when a friend asks you that question. But I know for others of you, this is like a critical life and death kind of question. I mean, this matters to you deep to your soul because of the compassion that you have and the way that you see the world. And so I want to do my best today to try and give an answer. Now, I should let you know that there's 3 different groups of people that we're talking about as we talk about this. 3 different groups of people you may want to have compassion towards. One of them is people who have had no exposure to the gospel, that they live in an area that's so remote or they're so not in communication with the rest of what's happening in the world that they have never heard the name of Jesus. You think of people like the Quechua tribes people in the Amazon basin, or some of the Aboriginal peoples in Australia. Or you think of people who are extremely backwards and difficult people, like the Hawkeye peoples of Iowa City. And you say, what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to them? So the first issue is the no exposure people. Second one is the too young category. And what about people who died before they really had the developmental experience to be able to talk or think or make this kind of a decision? What about babies, or what about little kids that die in a tragedy? And I think many of you know this is a very personal question for me, as Kelly and I have 2 babies that we lost a number of years ago before they had a chance to see the light of day. And so what's going to happen to those kids or other little kids who die young? Third question is, what about people who are mentally challenged? What about people who just don't have the intellectual faculties to be able to make this kind of an informed decision? How is God going to judge them? And for the sake of this morning, I'm going to lump all 3 of these groups into the same category and answer the question, what about those who have not heard, with all 3 of these groups in mind, and hopefully that'll help you from a variety of different angles. So when it comes to answering the question, what about people who have never heard, there are 3 different ways that Christians oftentimes answer this question. Number 1 is, some Christians would say that it's an automatic ticket to heaven. If you haven't heard of Jesus, you can't be accountable for it, so you'll automatically wind up going to heaven. Now, this is a problematic view for a number of reasons. One of the reasons that this is problematic is that it doesn't take seriously the problem of sin and rebellion against God. It basically winks at the idea that all of us have rebelled from God and done evil things, and there has to be some kind of a punishment for that evil that we've done. And so because of the way it treats the doctrine of sin in a lightweight manner, I would say that this is a challenging view to hold. Besides that, the Bible is filled with passages that tell the people of God to spread the message of Jesus to everybody. And if we're told to spread the message of Jesus to everybody, there must be a reason for that. And if they have an automatic ticket to heaven if they haven't heard, but maybe heaven, maybe hell if they have heard, that demotivates us from telling people. And so it doesn't seem that this makes sense with what the Bible teaches. There are other people who would say that it is an automatic ticket to hell. And I apologize for kind of the crass way of putting this up here on the screen, but it's just an abbreviated version of what some Christians hang on to. It's the idea if you haven't heard, you're automatically condemned, and there's no chance for you at all. And this is problematic as well, largely because we have a God whose character qualities are things like love and justice and mercy and compassion and long-suffering and patience. And it seems that automatically sending everybody to hell without even giving them a chance to hear or make a difference, make a change in their life, or believe in anything that could get them off that track, it seems pretty cold and callous and against God's character. And God's heart, God's heart is salvation and spreading it to all people. And so you wonder, that doesn't make sense with the biblical view that I've seen either. The third position is this one. It's the position that says, I don't know. And maybe there's some other criteria that's out there by which God can judge those people. And I want to let you know very firmly at the beginning of this message, this is the category that I'm in, the I don't know category. Just for those who are slow, I do not know category, okay? That's where I am. And I can't help but wonder, maybe there's some other criteria that are out there that God uses to evaluate people who are far from God. Now, or who have never heard. And I don't say I don't know because I've never thought about it before, didn't check into this situation. I say I don't know because there's not a single passage in the Bible that you can turn to a page and say, aha, here's the answer to the question, what happened to people who haven't heard? Here is, what criteria God's going to use to judge them. And I don't know why God didn't reveal that in his scriptures, but I know that it's not in there. I've been looking for it for 25 years, and you just don't see that kind of a place in the Bible. Now, the Bible doesn't leave us helpless. There are clues throughout the Bible, and we'll go through those for the rest of the message. But I think, in essence, my real answer is I don't know the answer to this question. This is even an issue that's hotly debated among followers of Jesus. When I went to get my license to be a pastor in the Christian and Missionary Alliance, I found out there was debate about this issue even in the room of the people who were deciding whether or not my doctrine's good enough to give me a license. Because this question came up, and I gave them the answer, I don't know, and my biblical reasons behind it. And they asked me a few questions, and then they said, can you please leave the room for a while? And so I said, okay. So, I go upstairs and wait for them, and they're talking, come back downstairs when they're done, and they ask me a few more questions. And then they sent me out of the room again, said, can you please leave the room? So this interview that was supposed to be 1 hour turned out to be a 4-hour interview, and most of it was around this question, what about people who have never heard? And what they found out about each other while I was out of the room, I found this out later, was that they didn't agree on the answer to this question. And so they were debating whether they could let me in, but then they realized they'd have to kick each other out if they kicked me out too, and that could be a big problem. So anyway, that's how I got to be a pastor. Aren't you encouraged? Just squeaked by.